Foster-Gordon. I am the petroleum geologist with the Department of Energy in the Ministry of the Presidency. And I'm here to speak to you today on the oil and gas sector, its developments thus far, and its impacts. And I know when I say impact, a lot of people think right away negative impacts. But today I would like to focus on the positive impacts, particularly as it relates to our mining sector. So I'm going to jump straight into our presentation this morning. So the Department of Energy, a lot of people hear about us and they automatically think of the Guyana Energy Agency. We're a very new department. We came into being on August 1st, 2018 by decree of His Excellency President Granger. And our main mandate is to implement sound policy and provide institutional and legal oversight for the oil and gas sector. And we do this primarily through the help of the Petroleum Unit of the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission, which is the technical regulator of the sector. And from our vision and our mission, as you can see, our work is essentially to optimize the revenues and the benefits of the sector for the Guyanese population. Primarily, if you look at our mission, to effectively and efficiently manage the hydrocarbon resources of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana while optimizing the benefits of all Guyanese. So we do this through our contract management activities, ensuring that we have the proper policy and legal framework in place to ensure that everything is run and conducted in a way that ensures sustainable development. Because at the end of the day, these resources belong to the Guyanese public, and oil and gas is a finite resource, so we need to ensure that it is managed and our policies that are implemented ensure that the benefits are felt for generations down the line, even after the resource would have run out. So exactly how do we go about for the management of the sector? First and foremost, it's a new sector, new not just to Guyana, but to all the agencies involved. And when you think of the agencies involved, it's not just the GGMC or the Department of Energy. We need to consider the Guyana Revenue Authority, the Ministry of Finance, Civil Defense Commission, which has the mandate for oil spill preparedness and planning. What we do to prepare these sectors and to better manage, what we do to prepare these agencies, and to better manage the sector is to build out our structures and build our capacities. Like I said, it's very new. We all need to have better systems and policies in place to properly manage the sector. It's a very dynamic sector. Technology changes in the blink of an eye. And because this discovery came at a time where we just were not ready, And so there are lots of things that are being put in place right now to help us manage this sector. First and foremost, recruitment and institutional strengthening. So this not just speaks to the Department of Energy. Since we were first formulated in 2018, presently we have, from then to now, we have about 11 members of staff, and hopefully that should be increasing within the next 2 months. We've also been working through the World Bank project on petroleum resources governance and management. We've been working with other agencies to assist them in building capacity, improving their legal and regulatory framework, and building out their structure to better manage the sector. You may have read in the press recently about the EPA developing their oil and gas unit. So that was facilitated through this World Bank project. So we've also been working with the other agencies to revise legal frameworks. So that's something we work closely with Guyana Bureau of Standards, Civil Defense Commission, the EPA, to ensure that all our draft legislation that we're currently developing are aligned to have a very cohesive management approach for the sector. And as you hear me frequently mentioning all these other agencies, we also seek to have greater coordination among our agencies. I cannot stress that this is new and nobody knows everything, So, and we found that, as the saying goes, a house divided can't stand. So it is in the best interest of Guyana that our agencies, our key agencies who are involved in the management of the sector work closely. So that is something we also ensure that we have close collaboration and coordination with the other key agencies in the sector. We're also engaging our stakeholders, which is one of the reasons I'm here today. We have advertised for the hiring of a communications company, which will be tasked with planning and executing our communications strategy. But in the meanwhile, the department has been going out to different communities, different religious groups, local government bodies to really bring awareness up on the sector. We've been focusing on raising awareness of the opportunities, what are the requirements for participation, and what are the benefits, not just benefits of being hired by a company like Exxon or Schlumberger or Halliburton. What are the indirect benefits, the spin-off benefits that transcends the other sectors? What are the other, these benefits, these multiplying benefits that you really would not notice? Like a taxi drivers getting more jobs, especially for a taxi service that ensures that its drivers have proper defensive driving skills, proper customer service attributes. You find these companies having more service, and it's because you have more companies come in, they require a certain level of service, and they gravitate towards these type of transportation service providers. We have greater tourism activity. So these are the kind of multiplier benefits that we talk about when we go to our community outreach campaigns. And we also seek to provide an opportunity for members of the public to participate in fruitful discussions. Have them come and engage, like Dr. Bino, we usually take the Council for Technical Vocational Educational Training to find out about what are the educational pathways to take to ready them for the sector. How are some of the ways that we can clarify the misconceptions that may be out there? So this is the kind of forum that we try to encourage with our public awareness campaigns. So now, turning to the petroleum sector, as you may know, we've had 14 discoveries to date. It's a very lovely diagram, courtesy of DPI. So of the 14 discoveries, the first 13 were within the Stabroek block. So Jethro 1 on the Orange block by Tullow, it was pretty exciting because it proves that the petroleum system functions outside of the Stabroek block. And so it increases the prospectivity of the other blocks that are surrounding the Stabroek block. And in keeping with this, we also have 2 other operators who are planning to do further exploratory drilling this year. And additionally, Tullow has one other well, due to be drilled before the end of the year. So it's an exciting time. Lots is going on out there. And to date now, because of these discoveries, our estimated recoverable resource is almost at 6 billion barrels of oil equivalent. By barrels of oil equivalent, that refers to, you may have a quantity of gas and you translate that to its equivalent amount in barrels of oil. So when I say barrels of oil equivalent, that means the oil and gas quantities. So we're looking at almost 6 billion barrels. So it's a great resource at our doorstep. So it's a lot of work to ensure that it is managed transparently and in a way to encourage sustainable development. And with this, we're expected to earn approximately $300 million US dollars from 2020, which would be ramped up significantly. We have presently Liza Phase 1 development, which is expected to start in the first quarter of 2020, and Liza Phase 2, which was approved, should be started by mid-2022. And then there is, following that, would be the PR development, which has not been reviewed as yet, but that will be the next development project coming on stream. So this is a map of our offshore acreage, which is, there we go. So this is the infamous Stabroek block. And we have here our clump of discoveries. All have been sandstone reservoirs with the exception over here of Ranger, which is the first carbonate discovery. So let me just zoom in on this little portion. So we have our Liza and Payara developments will be occurring in this particular area. And over here, what we call the Turbo Complex, where all of our most recent discoveries to date, from Turbo to Yellowtail and Longtail, Haimara, have been occurring in the southeastern part of the block. Tullow's discovery is approximately in this location. So So that's something pretty interesting for this part of the Guyana Basin. So for phase one development, which will be coming, like I mentioned, will be coming on stream first quarter of 2020, we have 17 subsea wells that will be tied to an FPSO. I should have pointed it out on the very first slide. That ship in the background is the Liza Destiny, which is en route to Guyana and will be arriving within this quarter. So for this development plan, we have here 8 production wells, which are tied to what we call manifolds. It's like a center which coordinates the activities for these wells. So our green wells represent our production wells. The light blue lines are our gas injection lines, and the dark blue are the water injection lines. So you have 8 production wells, 6 water injection, and 3 gas injection wells. And these will be tied through our risers to the FPSO. The red line is what we call the umbilical, which carries our the electrical wiring and the mechanism to power the manifolds at the wellheads. The phase 2 development would be very similar to this. However, it will have more wells. It will be approximately 30 wells with 15 production wells, 9 water injection, and 6 gas injection wells. Essentially, they will be starting gas and water production very early on in the development to ensure that they maintain the pressure within the reservoir to keep the production at a certain optimal level. For Liza Phase 1, maximum production should reach 120,000 barrels of oil per day. And for Phase 2, that will be approximately 220,000 barrels of oil per day. So essentially, let's say by the time PIR comes on, we're looking at about 700,000 barrels of oil per day production. So it's a lot of revenues to be coming to Guyana. And so when we think of all these revenues, a lot of questions that well, not just a lot, the main question that we get when we go to our stakeholder meetings is, how does it benefit me as a man in the street, as a regular guy? I mean, we know our direct benefits through the royalties, withholding taxes. We also have the profit from the production. These are standard things stipulated in the contract. We have job creation, which I'll speak to later. But we also have our indirect benefits. Now, these indirect benefits, like I mentioned, it can come in the form of increased investor confidence. You may find now we have a lot of international businesses and franchises that are invested in Guyana. We have raising of standards, quality and security levels. This is very important. The oil and gas sector requires very high quality and safety standards because of, first of all, it requires very high capital investment, and the risk involved is very high. If you're drilling to 5,000 meters below the surface and you're dealing with fluids that are coming out at really high temperatures and pressures, so safety is paramount. And because of that, contractors, subcontractors are required to practice this very high level of safety and represent this high level of quality in their standard of work. So local businesses, in as much as we encourage businesses to partner with international businesses who may have experience in the sector, our local businesses are able to learn from these international partners. They're able to increase their safety standards, their level of quality, so there's also the transfer of knowledge as they begin to learn more about the sector, and the transfer of technology. Because like I said, technology within the oil and gas sector changes in the blink of an eye. It's very dynamic. And because of the level of risk, it is constantly changing to improve and make the operational environment more efficient. We've also noticed, as an indirect benefit, improvements in physical and social infrastructure. Well, this may not be so evident, but we have had increases in our shore-based facilities. A lot of people are investing in these kind of facilities, and we're hoping eventually we may have a large enough deep water facility that can benefit exports for mining and the forestry sector as well. And like I mentioned, the multiplier effect of increased economic activities. Many times I meet people from these external companies, these investors, they come to Guyana and they want to know what is there to do in Guyana. People want to go visit the Kaitra Falls, they want to visit the restaurants, they want to know what are the best bars. So these are the kind of multiplier effects that I speak of. So our other indirect benefits, like I mentioned with the discovery of on Jethro 1, we have increased confidence in that petroleum system existing outside the starboard block. So it increases the value for Guyana's offshore acreage. So for this reason, for this reason and the fact that we're also updating legislation, we are not issuing any licenses presently. So that way, when we go now to open and competitive bidding, hopefully in 2020, Guyana can receive better value for its offshore acreage. There's also the potential for impactful, transformative developments in the power sector. So there is currently a working group that is being established to properly assess the gas reserves that we may have, because in as much as we're re-injecting gas produced, at some point in time we will start producing more. And so there's a feasibility study that will be done to see what are the benefits that we can get from the gas, how much it is, if it is sufficient to encourage investment to utilize and bring gas to shore. So that is something that we are even currently looking at presently. Now, local content participation. I spoke about companies partnering with external investors. Local content speaks to that, and it also speaks to hiring of local professionals and local services. So a simple definition that I have here, the active participation and development of Guyanese labor and suppliers in the petroleum sector. So it is our goal to have as many Guyanese as possible working in the sector. I don't say this to scare you here in the mining sector, but it's a new sector and we need to have the benefits come to Guyanese. We need to have more local spend. So for this, we encourage local content. We encourage companies to hire as many Guyanese as possible to source where possible, where available, and when it's competitive, hire local companies to provide support services they may need, whether it's janitorial services, logistics, transportation, all these different support services that are provided. Companies are asked to seek out Guyanese suppliers first. And then there's also the issue of joint ventures for the larger companies for providing more technical services. I mean, even if you think of the construction of the ExxonMobil headquarters in Ogle, the contractor, Nabi, actually has a joint venture with, I think it's a Trinidadian company. So it's those kinds of partnerships that we want to see come out from this sector and the work that is being offered. And through these kinds of partnerships, is like I mentioned, that's how we have that transfer of knowledge and technology and increase in safety and quality standards as well. So these are some of the areas of employment that we have seen so far. These are numbers as of December 2018. These numbers have increased since, but this is as of December 2017. It's primarily in management, professional, like our engineers, lawyers, accountants, supervisory, or semi-skilled. And I'll get to this later on the electricians or welders or heavy-duty vehicle operators. These are some of the skills that are currently sought out right now. And because they're sought out, it creates a strain on our technical vocation educational centers to really be able to produce the amount of technicians to feed not just the oil and gas sector, but all the other sectors that need them, or electricians or welders or plumbers. So they now have found that they have to increase their intake, because I have heard reports that the service companies for this particular sector are coming for welders, and there are not enough welders to fill the amount that they need. So we really need to increase the amount of technicians that we produce from these agencies, these institutions, to properly feed into the sectors that need them. So how do these benefits translate to the mining sector? Like I mentioned, the petroleum sector really operates with very high safety and quality standards. And that goes from the engineers to the janitorial services. And speaking to Guyanese who've had the opportunity to work with some of these companies, I hear them talk about how hard it was to adjust, but eventually after they do adjust, how much they focus on safety and how it has become a part of their life. I mean, I personally encountered this safety culture when I was studying abroad in petroleum geoscience, and for me it was mind-blowing. The emphasis on ensuring that you have your proper PPE. I mean, we all know that safety is important, but sometimes you might think, oh gosh, this place too hot. Do I really need to wear a coverall? The sun too hot, like this hard hat makes my head sweating. Are these things really important? But how many incidents can we actually avoid if we actually adhere to the proper safety protocols? And I think this is something that we can really learn from the petroleum sector and adapt to the mining sector. You know, we've had a lot of incidents of cave-ins, and while I know that the dynamics of that petroleum sector and our mining sector are different, but if just a fraction of this safety culture can be translated to our miners so that they can understand the importance and, you know, something that the petroleum companies focus on, they look at the cost of downtime. So if there is an incident where a door slams and takes off a little tip of somebody's finger, the whole facility shuts down because they have to investigate this incident. And they look at the cost that it takes to shut down the facility, to bring in the health and safety personnel to investigate, to make the reports. And when they translate that cost and they think of the investment and the risk involved from shutting down the facility, they say, well, you know, it's not worth it, so let's invest in ensuring that we have the right safety culture. And one important practice that they have is the stop the job practice, where any and everybody can stop a job if they realize that something is being done that does not adhere to the safety culture. So even if it is a technician working on the drill floor, and they see a company exec walking on the drill floor, and that particular company exec, even if it's the president of the company, is not wearing the proper PPE, that technician has the authority to stop that president of the company or the CEO of the company from going further, and prohibits him from doing anything else until he's wearing proper PPE. And so that is a very important practice that we can adopt. And when you have those interactions, the staff on the vessels and the facilities are actually encouraged at the end of the day to record these things and submit it to their operations and safety officer on board the vessel. So these things they're recorded, and members of staff are actually rewarded for identifying instances like this and applying the lessons that they learned to ensuring that safety is adhered to on the vessel. And another thing I would like to touch on too that will benefit the mining sector is the increased level of quality, like I mentioned. Companies have to be in adherence with certain standards. Our institutions producing graduates need to be accredited. We need to have very stringent processes within our private sector for ensuring that our output is standardized and quality is in every aspect of the work that we do. So with the increase in support services, even with accommodation, like I mentioned, logistics, technical services, IT, our electricians, our plumbers, our construction workers, they all are required to produce at a particular level of quality. And these are services that the mining sector uses and can benefit. So their increase in quality benefits the mining sector as well. And we also look at the infrastructure development through direct investment from the private sector as well as public investment from government when government starts to have their revenues as well. So I mentioned our TVET institutions. We have been working closely with the Council for Technical Vocational Education and Training. And like I mentioned, they have noticed that they and that they have not been able to produce as many technical graduates as the industry requires. So what we encourage is partnerships with the private sector and our technical vocational education to not only develop their programs to ensure that they have competency and efficiency, but also to encourage innovation within our technical vocational institutions and enhance their knowledge base and increase their productivity. So we seek to have private sector companies work with these institutions to give them a clear idea of what they want, what are the type of skills that they need, the quantities that they would need, the level of competency, and so even if possible to find a way to facilitate trained working hours, or training hours, yes, because we recognize too that our technicians graduating from these institutions, you may graduate, you may need a job, but you don't have the level of experience that's required for an entry-level position. So what we encourage is to have partnerships. I know at the university there's a similar program for the engineering programs where during your breaks you work with companies in the sector. So we encourage the private sector to have these kinds of partnerships with the technical vocation institutions. So that way these institutions can really develop and produce the technicians that you require. Now looking too at our Green State Development Strategy objectives. So we've spoken about safety and quality. Now I want to have a brief look at our governance objectives, our overall governance objectives. And I took a few extracts from our Green State Development Strategy, Vision 2040. And the first one that stood out to me was making mining standards more stringent and provide incentives for the adoption of modern and environmentally sound technology and more accurate prospecting. Now, that's on your right, you have the petroleum sector, which brings practices that can be adopted to the mining sector to improve safety. Like I spoke about this, the stop the job practice, or even simple as something like their work orders. Before you do a particular job, you fill out a form with your work order, and you basically everybody sits at the table, and it's like you do the job, but it's like a tabletop exercise to ensure that you identify all the potential risks and hazards, and to ensure that we have all the tools and the knowledge to avoid them. So these are the practices that I hope that can be adopted from the petroleum sector to help the mining sector in particular meet this particular GSDS objective. Also, the next point, economic competitiveness and resilience, will be achieved through green and inclusive economic diversification. So the translation, greater demand for high-quality standards and technical skills foster competitiveness, as well as the increase in support services and sectors. So we have a high demand now, like I mentioned, I can't stress this enough, for our support services. And I'm glad to see that the private sector has been responding. We have a lot more logistics companies, tour companies, janitorial services, and they have all been actively working. I heard of one particular business who realized that, okay, they were trying to get contracts from a particular company, but they realized that their infrastructure did not meet that company's safety requirements. And so what they did, they have put a pause on operations to update their safety system to ensure that they can have these awards from this particular company. Now, when this business has increased their safety system and their safety infrastructure, we all benefit when we use this particular business. We know that if there's a fire, their fire alarm will be working and their sprinkler systems are in order. So these are the kind of benefits that we can get from this kind of development. And also looking at improving the operational environment for businesses is very important in the GSDS. And I particularly like this one because it speaks to improving the performance of key public institutions, and reviewing outdated business regulations. The petroleum sector, I can't stress, is so dynamic, and technology changes so fast, and government has had to play a catch-up game to ensure that all our processes, all our legislation are where they need to be to really facilitate proper management of this sector. And as such, and I've seen it for myself, where agencies have had to create more streamlined processes and practices within their agencies to ensure application processes for permits don't take 2 years. You know, if you submit a particular form, you know, you can get some feedback within a shorter period of time. And agencies are realizing this and taking the steps that they need to change their internal processes and to have more streamlined operations, even within our department. We are in the process of developing standard operating procedures to not just govern how we work internally, but how we manage our interactions with external stakeholders, whether it be government agencies or members of the private sector. So this is something that I've seen other government agencies have been working on to have their own standard operating procedures and streamline their different, whether it be application processes, review processes, whatever interactions they have with the sector. So it is our hope that when these improvements are made, our goal actually, that these improvements don't just stay within the oil and gas unit of that particular agency. It actually goes to the different operational aspects of those agencies. And for this reason, we actually also have a kind of an interministerial technical committee on petroleum. So this is how our agencies actually work together to ensure that they're all properly aligned and we have a more cohesive and efficient management of the sector. And that actually brings me to the end of my presentation.